Retro Future.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, I am Dankit Lexicon, and welcome to our next installment on Steampunk Cities. And this time we'll be delving into the design aspects, and rather than generalizing, I'll approach this topic as we have our video on steampunk warfare, by drawing examples from our own steampunk setting, the Association of Ishtar. First, a word of caution, because I'll be making references to our previous video, so I'll try to make a playlist so you can watch all of these in order. If you're here just for the lore of a steampunk city, well, I guess you are free to jump ahead. However, if you're interested in the process of creating one, stick around, because we have a lot to discuss. When thinking of cities in fiction, iconic places like the Emerald City, Rapture, or King's Landing might spring to mind. Cities are a wonderful narrative device. They can serve as destinations for characters or as a hub where multiple stories can unfold. A city is never just one place. It's a cluster of interconnected locations, each with its own unique tales to tell, from bustling docks to towering high-rises. Therefore, when designing a fictional city, it's difficult to generalize. In part 1, I explained that cities aren't just geographical features that develop in isolation. This is why many fantasy cities often feel generic, because the unique qualities and histories which span over thousands of years are left unexplored. Most fictional cities rely on a central theme or hook. For steampunk cities, we must distinguish between steampunk, a subgenre of science fiction, and its fantasy counterpart, gaslamp fantasy. By the way, Gaslamp Fantasy has its own dedicated video on this channel. Gaslamp Fantasy cities often draw on classic fantasy tropes, incorporating elements like Tudor-style architecture alongside pipes, boilers, and steam-powered machinery. Of course, there is no shortage of intricate clockwork devices. In high magic settings, or where species like dwarves and gnomes are involved, are particularly advanced. You might even find electric spires or Tesla-inspired wonders dotting the skyline. Alternate history steampunk, however, draws its inspiration from history and literary tropes, including elements from romantic futurism, the precursor to modern science fiction. This aesthetic forms the basis of today's discussion. Many aesthetic genres, fiction or otherwise, blend futuristic and historical elements. To explore this further, I recommend revisiting our videos on architectural styles such as Art Deco and Art Nouveau. If you've seen those videos, you'll understand why Art Deco and Art Nouveau often dominate world design, as seen in settings like BioShock and Frostpunk. These styles are visually striking, versatile, and carry significant cultural and historical weight, making them a natural choice for many creators. This brings us to the crucial question: what architectural style should you choose? Architecture doesn't arise in a vacuum. Each style is shaped by its historical context, rather as a reaction to contemporary developments, ideological statements, or a vision of the future. The size and aesthetics of a building reflect the mindset of its creators, whether constrained by budget or built with grandeur in mind. Architecture is more than just functional, it communicates who inhabits the space. In other words, buildings are an extension of characters. Individuals can quite literally shape the skyline of a city. This phenomena is evident in places like New York, where ambitious people treated the city as a canvas for their legacy. But before we can shape a city skyline, we need to create the canvas. And that's why we must ask the all-important question: how do cities come to be? In our previous video, we discussed the political, geographical, and logistical landscape from which medieval cities emerged. The main takeaway is that the term city, a legal status inside the feudal system, emphasizing the city's sovereignty and ability to project political and economic power. The other is that cities serve an important logistical, economic, and administrative function. In that regard, everything is about location, location, location. To demonstrate this, let's explore the history of one of England's most iconic cities, Liverpool, as it will develop in the setting of the Association of Ishtar. The first mention of Liverpool dates back to 1207, when King John granted the settlement a town charter. See our previous video. It used to be a fishing village along the Mersey River, whose name originated from the old word Liverpool, meaning Pool Bay. Despite its location on the west coast, the Mersey River connected England's interior with the Irish Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. The latter is important because in the age of sail, ships depended heavily on favorable tidal and current patterns. Its northern Atlantic drift ensures a milder climate than anywhere else on the island. On top of that, Liverpool natural estuary made it a safe place for ships during bad weather, making it a natural harbor. And yet, that is not how Liverpool became one of England's most prominent trading hubs. At the start of the colonial period, Manchester became England's biggest industrial centre, shipping its goods and resources across the Mersey River, destined for overseas territories. Meanwhile, Ireland depended on the ports as well, especially for agricultural produce, and all this overseas traffic went straight to Liverpool, making it the empire's most prominent hub. As a result, Liverpool's merchants became prominent in the Atlantic Triangle trade of the 17th to 19th century, so named because Liverpool's manufactured goods would be shipped to Africa to be traded for slaves. In turn, the slaves would be traded in the Americas for resources like cotton, pepper, and tobacco that would be taken back to England to be processed in places such as Manchester. It's estimated that the trafficking of half the African slaves was orchestrated from Liverpool's offices, until 1807, when England became the first nation to make slave trading illegal. From that point on, the abolitionist crusade made England disengage from the slave-owning Americas, such as Brazil and the southern states. While the war against the slave trade was ongoing, Liverpool remained one of the busiest ports in the world, as a key hub for global trade. It continued to import raw materials like cotton, coal, and grain while exporting manufactured goods. Liverpool adapted to these changes by diversifying its economy, with thriving industries such as shipbuilding, textiles, and machinery. This was further stimulated through immigration. Due to the combination of population growth and development, great care had to be given to its infrastructure. In 1818, the Liverpool Gas Company provided its first power infrastructure. By 1830, England's first railway was established between Liverpool and Manchester, connecting the city to Britain's industrial heartland. Let's pause here for a moment. Before the time of steam, people were dependent on water for transport or a good old-fashioned horsepower. This situation has been the norm since the advent of the wheel. Although there were improvements, armies and traders alike depended on water for movement. The railroads changed all this, being able to transport great amounts of resources and people far away from the rivers into the hinterland. Because trains were far cheaper than the stagecoach, the freedom of movement increased for the rich and poor alike. For Liverpool, however, water-based shipping remained key, and being the maritime gateway to England, the city's population swelled from 77,000 to over 500,000 by 1869. One of the reasons for this massive increase was the infamous potato famine, which forced hundreds and thousands of Irish to relocate, of which 300,000 would settle in Liverpool. One can imagine that with such immigration population, there was a lot of strife. Despite this, most riots and major protests correlated with the overall mood in the country rather than the situation in the city itself. like the Liverpool riots of 1839 that were part of a broader wave of social and political unrest, but that is all beyond the scope of today's video. Amidst the political and demographic turmoil, Liverpool got hit by 3 cholera epidemics. This instigated the Sanctuary Act of 1846 that would make Liverpool the first British city to overhaul its antiquated sewage system under the supervision of James Newland. And with that, I want to conclude the historical segment of this video, and now it's on to speculate on Liverpool's divergence and what our steampunk version of Liverpool will look like. And although I have already recorded much of that video, due to time constraints and changes in my personal circumstances, I'm afraid I'm gonna have to cut it short for now, but don't worry. We will continue speculating on the history of Liverpool. And once that is done, we will continue a new video, not on a historical city, but one that is pre-planned. Unfortunately, I cannot give you a timetable because I am very busy with the preparations for our upcoming Kickstarter for Nightwatch, our steampunk TTRPG. If you enjoyed this video and if you want to help us develop this world further, please follow us on Kickstarter and support the project. And if you want to help me develop more original art to include in these videos, please consider supporting us on REAM. Thank you for your patience, and as always, make things your way.